fellow Americans and Russians and other countries, I did not forget you. Countries A through Z. We are in a trap that's semi-ancient that measured and maintained, enforced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded more and more without countries A through Z realizing it forced, hurt, tricked, and persuaded them to respond to illusions that it created and to things that it did, not just negative, positive and negative, to keep the identity of what it was doing from discernment. There are proofs that an ancient transnational, like there are proofs that ancient interbranch or intelligence and their equivalent. And when I say that, no, what made the republic for which we stand capable of being defended, even though it's still abridged? There are proofs that has been abridged since semi-ancient times and rolls with its forms now, abridged. All of their, in other words, countries A through Z have been systems tactical ulterior from differences, from our differences, A through Z as its own. We have been systems tactical ulterior from the hyper native difference, the difference of the hyper invisible but still discernible. In my last videos, I talked about this. In other words, and for years I've been speaking about the complex. For years before the killing between where there's people wars now, and where they have been. See, each identity of response to things and like that. This breaching method made subject treatments and roles with them, roles with differences simultaneously as ground locations, differences as our own. Russia and America were shared here and there. Before America's founders were even born, Russia, China, they were here. But they were here and there, forced already, having been only remembered, involved with countries internationally grouped, individually grouped, coupled, grouped, and all together as systems tactical ulterior from that unabridged. That's why we're supposed to get the Constitution, its value unabridged, and why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them appreciated. Also, it is recorded clearer than day through time and through wars. Psychiatry has been for example, as one of the industries that is a concentrated example of where and how the nature of negotiations, the nature of diplomacy has only been capable to, in other words, our founders and nature itself communicated for us not to leave out the breaching method employed. Roles with all natures of wealth or not, and the difference. And roles with economies, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. With the difference of them worse, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the witch trial branches. In other words, the differences, exception to all that, systems tactical ulterior. No one was watching because everyone was forced, tricked, or persuaded to roles to an extent. Self-value without realizing, self-value with syntactical collusion /S against everyone else. And or even we're blaming other things, others, ourselves for what the breaching method caused and keeps. And defending that is simultaneously screening the breaching method. It is simultaneously forcing qualities of fact-tripping nature that are criminal insidiousness, that are hyper-criminally foreign influenced. The breaching method knew that nature would demonstrate this to us. I'm not even a lawyer, thank God. The names of the people of the sciences are a certain type of victim /hyper victim that the breaching method measures and maintains only capable of self-valuing roles with themselves and their syntax being and haven't been used remotely. Criminally foreign influence /hyper criminally foreign influence. Otherwise, they are sensed, including if as a majority of people, including if as everyone of every single and any grouping of countries that came from, as it knew, any grouping of countries that comes from, while as entertaining how locations, areas, and states are actually manifest They're not, it's with quality fact aspects of fact-shooting nature, and fact-shooting nature itself has criminal insidiousness nature, forced by nature itself to be manifest this way. Humanity pray. In other words, so there's a Scott Ritter as one of the sources on some of Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom YouTube channel. And he uses he used the word before, attrition. And he's apparently some kind of military guy, but he's also he was reportedly having had roles with the UN and with weapons inspections. Now, also, Connecticut's military, intermilitary, they have roles with Connecticut's news locations, WFSB, Fox Connecticut News, and WTNH, who are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with some judges and prosecutors, and private tied to them, personally and professionally involved with them, including foreign and domestic medical families, with all kinds of natures of organized crimes, roles, and abuses of little kids, elderly, and veterans in relative ways. And, for example, concentrated roles with probate court judges and people tied to them and the locations tied to them, involved with this on off the state judicial branch officers, on off the state corrections officers, involved with whole predicate acts methods that we have too long had blamed on other things other than ourselves. Those whole predicate acts methods, just having black pupils, whites of eyes, we can discern. I know countless people who are not black, except for how they know that they have black pupils. And they know black is slandered and white is slandered. How many types of people who are black are? They don't even speak the same languages. How many types of people there are white are? And this whole time, the breaching methods of science assignment of these natures of debate or non-debate and the exceptions, leaving itself out. I shouldn't have to, no one should have to argue with people about that, or have people, change and fake what we say, as the psychiatrists are only capable of doing. Before she was a doctor, Christina Sioka, she's involved with people with Old Weathersfield, on Church Street in Old Weathersfield, involved intercampuses through time, and with the houses and businesses next to Harvard Hospital, all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, overt criminal enterprises, child offenders, leaders of kids, first forced roles. They have judges and prosecutors and doctors forging and switching names, collusions with the FBI, including former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. There are proofs too that James Comey is involved too, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, especially if that was James Comey in the Britain Superior Court. There was a guy who looked just like him. The Britain Superior Court has a whole bunch of people involved with predicate acts before the World Trade Center, and they effected requests for help to me. But I wasn't clear if or how I was going to give that. But to one of the military, foreign and domestic involved, which is also confessions about use of the location /S, and confessions and requests to lie to girls tied to themselves by strangers, which is one of the things tied to the location, like the body dumping spot of a serial killer, a reported serial killer. Even if that was made up, that guy reported to be the serial killer is involved also from years before that with people and with a blue van, even though they said he only had it for 2 years. In other words, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and Harper Courts have a Eric Burgess, have a Justin Kovinskis, have others I don't know the names of involved with them, and like leasing agents, a whole bunch of people that went to my grammar school I didn't have classes with, and people tied to them have been involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, also in the form of wire crimes, falsified police reports, attaching little kids to fake ties to police and at the police station, and then as an adult, and through the news to cover up life progressions when the kids. They're having the kids criminally foreign influence since they are kids, planting evidence. Sometimes it's the people that's influencing them to the time where people are going to go and say this or that. Sometimes it's them, their own families. But it is also as families reported being and have been used by the breaching method, including the ones countering organized crime groups, that they are recorded consciously, shown you have been being and haven't been used remotely, criminally foreign influence as collusions with them, countering them tactically wrong. Which, for example, we're going to deal with this black people's rights of eyes. And the breaching method is a reassignment of what nature communicates with this. And reassignment of what our founders communicated about this. Our founders declassified, didn't have free speech. Our founders, plural, that asked us to communicate, to refer to them singular as James Madison. George Washington's little army wouldn't be able to counter the internationally entrenched monitored conversations that had slavery entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies before America's founders were even born, sickly distinctly per a method that had possession over the country it was through over the international companies of those countries, over the overt criminal enterprises, over the terrorists. Use/S is the difference of that too. Straight up use of criminal and seditious nature itself, styles of it. Otherwise, that body is sensed, even if it is a majority of people, even if it is every single person of an entire country. And that is adapted to. And any country, any grouping of countries that entertains the quality aspects of nature at their locations, areas, and states, the same thing, has complete remote possession of all quality aspects of their fashion treatment. It doesn't matter how rich they are. Doesn't matter who they are. In other words, this is not, everything's not on the records. Everything's on the records. In other words, this is also why, in other words, you guys pay attention. You know, there are distinct natures of wealth. And a lot of the nature of the wealth, they owe. And they only owe personally, you know, when they might try to debate it. Because we're gonna address if as a human species body. Otherwise, we're not going to do it right. How even the suburbs in America and in Russia and in Ukraine, they look almost exactly the same, and they were designed before America's founders were even born, and right through our founders' lifetimes. And James Madison was our founders, plural. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to help them and to use that plan and to counter-extort the rest of the founders. That means Native Americans and colonists forced to become America. Otherwise, to stay even worse, fact, human nature, tortured, extorted, and enslaved. The slavery method never went away. The only reason this appears to be debatable is because there has been maintenance. There had been uses that even they didn't fathom, where and how there are self-valued roles, blaming other things, others, ourselves, for both what our nature itself and what America's founders communicated for us to blame on a breaching method, a human fact should be nature breaching method. Well, how does nature communicate that? Nature communicates it. Yeah, see, I'm just trying to be dramatic. I don't mean to be insulting. Nature communicates it because nature shows us. Ask yourself what slavery was about. One of the things that slavery was about, true always, it was about a human fact should be nature breaching method. It was about reassigning what black people's whites of eyes communicate. It was about predicate acts with facts, methods, roles, needs, natures. Otherwise, that body was sensed, including if that body was the majority of people, including if that body was everybody. We don't just have to pay attention to the internationally monitored conversations that we have ignored. We also have to pay attention to a breaching that was using all location/s and all that to be collusions there and or right back to all location/s where everyone was already collusions, but they were forced that, tricked to it, hurt to it, persuaded to it, maintained, propagated, self-cultivated, shock and awe, and shown by the breaching method to keep that on other people too. Ugh. In other words, the species body has like we have means. The countries have no excuse to have means to fly across the world and put ships across the earth and communicate with everyone all this time, and they still have the suburbs designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, designed tactically denatured. In other words, to cause mass people needing food and reliance upon the breaching method forced mass farming needs. I'm not saying God bless the farmers now, but in other words, nature's going to keep showing we have problems here. We have been systems tactical ulterior from its own, and that being haven't been used remotely. And what that causes to use remotely, to keep everyone styles, needs, natures, blaming other things other than themselves, while needing to defend integrity, for example. Pretend they could make treatments proper of subjects like power, neutrality, reason, mind. So how could they speak from brain? They have all kinds of natures of organized crime at Harvard Hospital involved with Russians and Americans, Mr. Putin and Judge Napolitano. They put me in all fake conversations with people named Leahy, involved with multiple courts at the same time, as doctors and intelligence at Harvard Hospital, a whole bunch of people tied to a Leahy family who have had roles with predicate acts on my street through time, through other people. I never saw them on my street in my life. I never had a conversation with them. The first of 3 times they forced me for mental evaluation. The first time I forced people to call the police without telling them why. And I knew, they had to put me in fake conversations with themselves and with others. Increasingly, Kevin Dillon is one of the people involved, also with the guy who said he was his partner to my speech class the second time. I was a senior, and the reason I had to take the speech class, I didn't have a personal conversation with either one of those speech class teachers. Both of them have roles in Washington, D.C., and with World Trade Center attack names involved with, including of countries. These are names with Saudi Arabia, and with including with Glastonbury Intelligence, increasingly involved with Central Connecticut State University, involved with people with the name Scalora and Pandolf. And I don't know the rest of them. In other words, the Scaloras are increasingly involved with people named Demora with the Weathersfield Police Department, who have roles of home break-ins in the area through time. Also with various natures of courts, judges, and prosecutors who have been putting fake ties to little kids with foreign and domestic families, including military, including medical families, including, overt criminal enterprises and private ones originally and still clearer than day. Black peoples in this time. So in other words, we have the human species body of individual bodies. And where there are subjects like what's it called? Not restitution. It was something with an R. Attrition with an A. Attrition. Well, there's nuclear weapons in the background. In other words, when they're speaking about diplomacy and they want to speak in private, They're being dishonest because they have already blamed other things, others, ourselves since you guys were little kids. The things our founders really committed, and not just in America. There are proofs. No real founder of Russia or America would have had left, or of Ukraine would have the suburbs the way they are. They are tactically denatured. The ground below our feet, distinctly if we are citizens or if we are Native American citizens, because where that is fact-cheaping nature, that difference too is used to get over on everyone. Every American would help bring water and beautiful land. It's a nature's identity in relation to itself. We're all Native American. And we can do this and for poverty at the same time. We have to call it more than poverty, though. Because if you see those buildings behind people in rap videos in New York City, that was only allowed, that was forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, only allowed, propagated, only capable of being. And in other words, even if you try to do damage control with it, that was sensed. See the President Trump trying to do reciprocity with costs, with economics, with defense, because countries A through Z. And while he's trying to do that, and then he said, "Well, I have to wait for this person meeting and then go to the next." See, there's a nature that's forced where all sides can't defend themselves properly because there's another side involved, even if it's no longer standing. We could charge it and use it to show, because in other words, its method is still standing. Black pupils. We have not had this, what slavery is about. Having black pupils, whites of eyes is inseparable from what it's about. Having hyper-evidential is discernible here. More important than interbranch has been stacking. There have been collusions of all kinds of natures of organized crime. It might tell them to throw them into the same prisons with themselves. No, the prisons too, and their campuses, and their family members, and next to their campuses. Same ones about criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, right? We have to get them on paper, though. Where they try to put us, they use the courts to hide what happens. They're refusing to identify themselves legitimately into branch on a mass scale. And they use styles of criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw readings of statutes and precedents, originally instilled as collusion /S with what everyone missed because of the method /S that is recorded. That once we discern it, everyone's not going to miss it. We have to do it right here where we can discern it, through all ways. See, we have people who deny the significance of this. We have people who made the breaching method already showed modern countries A through Z when they spoke on anything serious like slavery. It showed them already they have to cover up things that are actually recorded tied to the collusion /S. If you're not blaming the breaching method, even when you're blaming things correctly, you're blaming it wrongly too, exactly the way it needed. In other words, think about why really more people are killing each other in the cities. And if you pay attention, those spots and things involved with it are involved with connections to the people from Wethersfield killed and from the suburbs killed and involved with killings in other cities. It's all fact-cheaping nature oriented, motivating everyone on a mass scale. People say and do things at locations as collusions with methods that bring things before courts or before people tied to databases like at campuses. And they tuck in collusion/S with subject treatments, name treatments, sequence treatments, timing of it. That is at the exact same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, in ways relative, because that's about, in other words, predicate acts too. But these are the most serious predicate acts with facts. And there are proofs that people don't even realize there could be predicate acts with facts, like wire crime acts and methods, mail crime acts and methods, that are hyper additional as collusion/S to cover up way worse too. It's not just the serial killer's reported body dumping spot. It's also the reported body dumping spot of Billy Grasso. Report 2 different spots he was reported dumped at by the media locations and by people on up and next to the, on up the state judicial branch offices and Wethersfield Police Department involved with that. Also with other murders and untimely deaths that were also recorded having been brought up at the same time, per the syntax and confessions and confirmations. Like, for example, intercities, people associated with Robert Rodriguez and his confessions and confirmations on Facebook about his roles with an untimely death, and people who were involved with one at Trinity College too, with my neighbors. I don't know if he's tied to my former neighbors, but he was using phenomenon near my house to make it look like he knew me 2 times. That's why he confirmed it on Facebook too. He's involved also with former police chief Centron with a whole bunch of people. And a whole bunch of people with their roles with Korea. Involved also with Mr. Murphy. And who I only had love for. Barely had communications with him. But in other words, I only had love for my fellow students too. They tried to make fake exceptions. Then you forget that and you're not paying attention. You know what I mean? But we all pay, we're all doing our stuff. So they're making a problem. They're screening roles with organized with criminal foreign influences and the difference of it. Because the differences of the 3, like so why they can't get witch trials right. You don't leave out what slavery is about when you bring up witch trials. And you don't bring up slavery, leaving out what witch trials are about. For example, that's proof of it is right where George Washington had to come by the leverage of James Madison and the founders behind him to counter-extort with James Madison's plan at Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. He had to leave slavery entrenched, though. He had to lie about his motivations for roles with the American Revolution. He had to tell truths, too, though. So he said he was extorted. The real reason, for example, we know we could observe it was because everyone was fact nature tortured, extorted, and fact nature enslaved. But his language was that because he was extorted. But again, too, he was using James Madison's plan and the leverage behind him. George Washington didn't have the leverage to counter internationally monitored conversations that had already been sustained. Collusion/S with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorist criminal enterprises. And then America's founders were born. All that stuff had been sustained. All what it caused was blamed on other things, others themselves too, even though the breaching method caused it and maintained that the outcome, that and how other things, others themselves would be blamed. And then that would be defended. And as further collusion/S with that or the prisons tied to them or the state offices. There's state offices like the state of Connecticut corrections offices, the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices. That are increasingly collusion/S with the World Trade Center predicate acts, with the World Trade Center attack, also with police phones families, and with other police forms. and with their sources, and with retired Weathersfield police chiefs with the same house slash SI recorded roles, forcing the principal child abuser and associate with locations with other people involved, like with the Robert Rodriguez and with the Daryl Chandler and with the Mike Roberts, planting evidences, raised criminally foreign influence with judges, prosecutors, and retired mayors. In other words, I never had a class with Mike Roberts. He's increasingly involved with people on Two-Route Highway, where it runs into Hangdog Lane, with people on off the judicial branch offices and off the corrections offices used remotely criminally foreign influence. Also up with and as people involved with spots next to the state capitol. Increasingly involved. All use remotely criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Please get them on paper, one name in sequence. A Judge Smith increasingly has roles with military criminally foreign influence and with people associated with WFSB predicate acts, with foreign and domestic countries, overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And now they have other judges involved, but they don't even know the extent of it themselves, which is also relative to why now we have to address there are criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, rot readings of statute and precedents. But there are also doctors with all kinds of scams, forging names of other doctors, making whole fake transcripts, criminally foreign influence uses of people's names and of databases. And other roles also with judges and prosecutors personally and professionally with that. All kinds of digital crime acts and methods. All kinds of evidences, racketeering, worse than war crimes. There. Not you, Mr. Putin and Judge Napolitano. Please get them on paper, one name in sequence, so they don't have to fear. All I have to do is keep it real. Please, I shouldn't have to beg you guys online. I was there many times. They made confessions. They made demonstrations. They made confirmations. Now we need to get them on paper because they have more people involved with violence too, including with weapons, including with poisons. And they do have roles with bodybuilding spots recorded too. Enzo Fienza is one of the people who lives across the street from South Sevilla, or his cousins did or do. And they have their location involved with people with the name Dylan. Also, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and town lines like that. In other words, in South Sevilla was in my fourth grade class. I never had a verbal conversation with him. Tried to make a fake exception. No, even in other words. Anyway, they have his Facebook page involved with people too. There are proofs he's got roles with state police and Whiting Forensics and former Mayor Gold and other mayors. And people, I have people tied to a South Sevilla and people who had conversations with my teachers behind my back, my educators. And they put and repeat fake things because they have been influenced from off campuses, including former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members. Increasingly of crimes with judges and prosecutors, intercities and intra-cities, with the houses involved with wire crimes with the police, whole wire crime methods where they fake phone conversations. Increasingly, Weathersfield police fake conversations with me. They have the Russians and Ukraine involved in their doctors. Harvard Hospital has Russians in Ukraine, and they have roles with fire departments with the names involved. Increasingly, people tied to a former Mayor Gold and other mayors from Weathersfield have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders about me, and telling lies to my family about me. It's clearer than day. Tactical delusions raw, too. And these readings of American history and of the sciences. We need experts. We need to clear out the delusions. That's why they need to follow paper, mandate law, and get on paper. So increasingly, intercities, people at Harvard Hospital and its campus, and the Institute of Living, founded on its campus in 1822, with slavery still entrenched in Hartford, and northern colonies and southern colonies, again, sickly distinctly, because the breaching method was entrenched. And our founders' plan was still, and is still, forcing counter extortion. But it has stalled out because of how our founders' communications have been replaced. They have replaced the scientific value of the human fact nature breaching method from the communications of James Madison and the founders behind him. And then he was a president too, by the way. And he still didn't have free speech. Reach. Who disbelieves? We need a Who Disbelieves Act because they don't get on paper. They have criminally foreign influence reading the statute. Always saying that online. Watch what they did with that. You have all kinds of natures of organized crimes with the intelligence community, especially ones with psychology, tactically delusions, raw black pupils. It is time. Judge Napolitano, please do what's right and respond for Harper Hospital. I want a response. I need help here. I told you before the World Trade Center. I want a response. I want them on paper with the Harper courts. I didn't know it was Harper courts and the FBI with them, and a whole bunch of people, criminal enterprise, foreign and domestic military, tied to his co-defendants too, and their family members. In other words, please, who disbelieves, get them on paper, one name in sequence. Please get this heard by Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom because they have Fox News has roles too. I can't get them on paper because it's the intelligence next to Fox News, Fox Connecticut News, the intelligence next to WFSB, Channel 3 News, next to WTNH, which is in New Haven, next to the FBI. No, they're involved with wire crime acts and method with Wethersfield Police. Now let's get them done with it and get them to fix the fake conversations with me with WFSB. That's all fake conversations with them and with other people. That's a whole bunch of natures of organized crime at the same time. And know how they put me in fake conversations with them about the World Trade Center. They did this with a whole bunch of different countries and people who are involved interstates. Central Connecticut State University. You have much to confess. Like with this a bunch of people tied directly and indirectly to a Detective Samuda with all kinds of predicate acts with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, etc. And Parker English, sick motherfucker, if that was you, next to on Walker Hill in Wethersfield, you better separate me from your delusions too, and your criminally foreign influence roles with that street and people tied to that place with the names. Well, we're going to address with the FBI. And do you know the FBI director, Robert Luskin? And let's get them on paper with the judges and prosecutors. Let's get them on paper with the Detective Samuda and the rest of the people at the East Hartford locations. And you guys, and with the corners of streets and conjunctions to Route 3 going by the state judicial branch. No. And what are you guys doing with Wethersfield Pizza? Wethersfield Pizza House with the Steven Stocco. He's got a bunch of educators and himself lying about himself and others, and with his wife and with their neighbors involved with more child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart. And they had time to use / as roles of it. And with the further ones then and now, like a Michael Emmett, and further with the town offices involved. Let's get them on paper, one name in sequence. What are they doing with the judicial branch offices? Yeah. Please, Judge Napolitano, get them on paper, one name in sequence. Let's go.